Well, as Sammy just mentioned correctly, Ivy League universities are some of the richest institutions in the world. Harvard, for example, has a $36 billion endowment. That's more than the entire GDP of Paraguay. It's more than 3 times what Goldman Sachs made last year. It's a lot of money. But for some reason, the federal government hands out billions of dollars to these universities instead of financing, I don't know, border security or clean water in Flint, Michigan, or something else might help normal people. The organization Open the Books has revealed just how much these schools profit from taxpayers. They also expose billions being sent to cosmetology schools and community colleges with graduation rates of barely 10%. Adam Andrzejewski is the founder of Open the Books. Join us to talk about this scheme. So give me some specific examples. I'm interested in this phenomenon, which if you talk to people who don't live in big cities, they'll tell you is pretty common, where low-income people are lured into these schools with the promise that they'll get a great job at the end, and they wind up only with student debt. Those schools are getting a lot of tax dollars, too?
There are schools across the entire continuum that the American public has no idea that they're funding. You mentioned the schools on hair and beauty and massage. The American taxpayer last year funded those schools to the tune of $750 million. And you come out with a license to cut hair, do massage, or do nails. Now, what's interesting is the tuition at those schools sometimes rivals that and exceeds that of Big Ten universities. Your empire schools, your high-end beauty schools, now the tuition is over $20,000 per year.
So, I mean, if you're analyzing this in terms of outlay versus return, is it worth it? Is it worth it for taxpayers to subsidize this and students to pay this tuition in order to get a license to cut hair?
Well, I think, you know, with student debt, arguably, you can make the argument that the cost of student tuition, fees, and room and board at these colleges is the biggest financial scandal facing America, with student debt now exceeding $1.7 trillion and exceeding consumer credit card debt. So, you know, look, market forces need to come into play. I think some of these policies are outdated. You've got for example, in our report, we show you've got the 50 worst performing junior and community colleges in the country. Last year, they soaked up nearly $1 billion worth of federal student financial aid funded by the American taxpayer. Their average graduation rate is 12%. We need to take a look at accreditation reform, amongst other reforms, within higher ed.
There's a massive lobby in Washington, which gets virtually no attention at all, that makes this wealth transfer possible. I mean, higher education swarms the Congress with lobbyists. Is there a more effective lobby in Washington?
Well, you know, maybe the Fortune 100 companies, right? So, look, we took a look at the salaries on how higher ed is literally gaming the taxpayers for personal gain. So at openthebooks.com, we've captured nearly every single public employee that works for a college and university across the entire country. And, Tucker, there's a new minimum wage for a higher ed employee, and that's $200,000 a year. We found 43,000 employees in higher ed across the country make $200,000 or more. Just in the state of California, there's 10,000 public employees working in colleges and universities that make more than $200,000.
And lastly, and quick, what percentage of those are administrators versus teachers?
So I don't have the breakdown of the professors, the administrators, the executives. However, in the 8 schools of the Ivy League, it's a perfect example of how they've gamed the system. Yeah. There's 147 of these administrators and professors that make more than $400,000 a year. There's 47 of them that make more than $1 million a year, and 5 of them, over the course of the last 5 years, cleaned off collectively each $20 million.
It's a pretty good game. I went into the wrong business. I should have been a professor. Adam, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
Great to be on the program.